Good evening, everyone from St Andrews, where this afternoon Norwich City had a different head coach in the dugout, but the outcome was very much the same as the rest of the season so far. A 12th consecutive game without a victory in the Championship, another defeat, this time a pretty damning one, losing 4-1 to newly promoted Birmingham, and certainly you have to add the context of their recent home form, the quality in their squad. This is not a run-of-the-mill promoted League One side, but this is certainly not a run-of-the-mill Norwich City side in the Championship. When you look at their history in this division, they are miles and miles off it. And I think today proved, to be honest, that even though there is still plenty of time for Philippe Clement to get used to his squad, to change things at Norwich, the problems run deeper than just the head coach. Because that performance today, although it came from a head coach with a very different background to Liam Manning, with different tactics, with a different style of communication, with different training methods, with a focus on fitness, it was a sort of performance that, to be honest, could have come from Manning and his team. I think if you'd showed everyone that, if you wiped their memory of Manning's sacking and showed them that performance, they wouldn't have been surprised at all. So I think the blame goes deeper than just Manning. I think that was obvious probably before, to be honest, but it was made particularly obvious by today's performance, where, again, so many of the themes were similar. So many players being passengers, not playing an active role. So many individuals you could pick out, sort of make a list of all the things that they did, and there would almost be nothing on it. And that's not just, players on the periphery. That's your central midfielders. That's some of your key players in there. And yeah, I think, to be honest, it was a pretty poor evening or afternoon, for those Norwich players. But we'll go back to Clement's selection, because that was probably the interesting point to start with of the afternoon. He obviously was picking a team that, to be honest, I don't think any of us had any idea what it would look like, whether it would be similar to Manning, whether it would be completely different, how he would fit this squad that's been smashed apart by injuries, really. How he would get that into the sort of system that he wanted. But actually, it was relatively similar to what Manning's been doing in the last few weeks. He kept a 4-2-3-1. The front four was the same. Oscar Schwartau and Jovan Makama were still out wide. Matthias Kvistgården was still just behind Josh Sargent up front. The one kind of major change from where one of the two from where they've been before was Kenny McLean being removed from left back and Kellen Fisher playing on that side. I noticed actually that he was a lot more inverted today than he has been so far this season, and certainly than he was under Liam Manning. Kenny McLean came back into midfield, and perhaps most notably and surprisingly, when that team news dropped, Shane Duffy was in it at centre-back. And the way that Clement explained it to me when I asked him about it post-match was that he wanted leadership, he wanted experience, he wanted players almost who he could trust today. And I think that's understandable. It's certainly not the first time that we've seen that from a new Norwich City head coach. I remember when David Wagner chose Tim Krul over an informed Angus Gunn when he first arrived at the club. And I think, it's understandable on one level, but this is someone who said that he's watched every single Norwich game this season. And Duffy certainly has struggled when he's played before. That was the case again today, but we'll come on to that. But what was clear from that setup was that Clement wasn't trying to completely overhaul things and make a statement with his first starting 11. I think, to be honest, the injuries kind of precluded him from doing that to a certain extent, but he was just trying to win this game and trying to pick the best team that could possibly do that. But they got off to the worst possible start 3 minutes into the game. Marvin Dukes, I think that's a terrible pronunciation, but it's my best right now, who actually was previously linked with Norwich, I think in the Daniel Farke era, tapped in from close range, a really poor goal again. I think there was a question of offside. I haven't seen it back since watching one replay on a TV screen that was quite far away after it happened. It looked like there might have been an offside in there, but Norwich were left quite exposed. They pushed their line very high, which actually was maybe a slight difference in the first 20 minutes. From what Manning tried to do. They did press quite high and they had quite a high line, which maybe wasn't best advised given the players in that defensive line. But they were exposed. Demarai Gray got in behind Jack Stacey, as he did a few times, to be honest, early on in the game. Crossed it, and it was a simple finish for Dukes in the third minute. And from there, you saw the players' heads drop, really. I think it looked like a group of players who didn't believe that they were going to come back into the game. It looked like a group of players who had the momentum and the new manager bounce, but then as soon as they conceded a poor goal, the wind went out of their sails, and I don't think many people in the stadium felt like Birmingham's lead was in much jeopardy. And in fact, in the 21st minute, they doubled it. Another goal from across Patrick Roberts, of course, formerly of the yellow and green parish, beat Callum Fisher too easily on that left-hand side. I think there were probably a few too many defensive problems for Fisher in the game. Maybe that's because he was on his weaker side, but either way, he was beaten by Roberts in a similar way to how Stacey was beaten by Gray for the first goal. He put the ball across, Jay Stansfield doesn't even need to get off the ground to head it in. Harry Darling is completely rooted. There's nobody near him. He's 10 yards out, getting on the end of a cross and heading home. And that, for me, spelled out the lack of quality in that Norwich defence, the catastrophic goals that they've been conceding all season. I actually saw a compilation of all of those goals pretty recently. And it's so poor when you see them all next to each other. And to be honest, these goals they conceded today would have fit right in with all of those conceded under Manning. So that was another poor goal. I didn't really feel like Norwich responded particularly well in terms of their performance, but they did manage to get a goal back. Matthias Quiscoren again. And while I'm on him, a word for what he's produced in the last few weeks, because when you look at how poor this team has been, he's now scored 3 goals in 3. Not only did he score that when actually it was Norwich's best move of the game by far. They moved it really well, got the ball into Jack Stacey, his cross was parried, and then Quiscoren bundled it in. I think Quiscoren has given them a lot. He scored that goal, but also he drove through the middle of the pitch. He showed intent. I think on the ball, he's actually a really good player and a really good dribbler. And he's kind of one of very, very few in this squad who you feel like make things happen. So that made it even less explainable when he came off in the second half. And I asked Clement about that, and he was relatively coy, to be honest. Post-match, said there were many reasons. Obviously, he's considering the fitness of a squad that's been decimated by injuries going into Tuesday's game against Oxford. So I think that was probably on his mind a little bit, but that kind of took all the threat away for Norwich. And by that point, it was 4-1 because on the stroke of half-time, Dukes, I'm struggling every time. I should have just looked it up before I came on this video, but this was his second goal. Another poor one, and again, opportunities for Norwich to clear it across. A couple of shots, Kovacevic saved, he couldn't parry it clear. The defenders couldn't get rid of it, and the striker was there, ready to tap it in without really any problems whatsoever, without any pressure. And Birmingham were 3-1 up going into halftime when there had so briefly been a feeling of hope in that way, and just over my left shoulder. And those fans didn't have long to savour that, because Birmingham went in at halftime 3-1 up. I felt it was almost impossible for Clement not to make any changes, but he didn't. He came out with the same 11 again, and he explained post-match that was because he wanted to give them a chance. He wanted to give them more than 45 minutes to prove themselves. But I think they've had, to be honest, at this point, however many games has been in the season, that's how long they've had to prove themselves, and they haven't done that yet. So, I found that a peculiar decision, but he was pleased with the second half overall. He felt there was a slight improvement in the intensity and the intent from his players, but they still lost the second half if you're looking at it in that way, because Stansfield got another goal in the 54th minute, and this was where Duffy's weaknesses really came to the fore, to be honest. A ball played in behind. He's well ahead of Jay Stansfield when that ball gets played. Kenny McLean, by the way, we have to say, lost the ball on the halfway line really poorly. Too Gray to kind of cede possession and let Birmingham in for that one. So the ball goes in behind. Duffy is the favourite for that. He kind of wonders whether to go or not to start off with. He kind of waits because he thinks Kovacevic is going to save him in a similar way to how he did against, I think it was Hull, where he plays a really, really short pass and then just collapses on the floor because Kovacevic hasn't come for it. But again, I think it was too far for Kovacevic. Maybe he could have done a little bit more. But to me, Stansfield always looked like the favourite in that race, because Duffy delayed, then Stansfield clearly had the most pace, got in behind, chipped over Kovacevic. And again, it was emblematic of these defensive struggles that Norwich have had all season. So you saw in the goals the problems that Norwich have had defensively. Norwich did score a good attacking goal, but again, I just felt like they were passengers. I felt like they were going through the motions. That's been the most frustrating thing, I think, for a lot of Norwich fans over the last few weeks, that not that they're making mistakes or that they're trying things and they're not coming off, or that they're trying to pass the ball out from the back and making silly errors, or they're scoring own goals or whatever. It's that you can almost watch that team pass you by and without really naming anything that they did. You can look at players like Mirko Topic, like Kenny McLean, to be honest, at times. Not often, to be fair, but today I felt McLean was in that bracket, like Jack Stacey, and you kind of struggle to list many things that they did in the game. It's one or two moments in the whole game, and the rest of it is just coasting, just going through the motions. You just run over there, you just go for the header, you make the tackle. You don't really think about what's next or what the intent is, or you don't go into it with belief. And I think a lot of that comes from confidence. And I think, to be honest, it was a team that just looked completely sapped of confidence. Not only when they conceded the goal, but overall, I think we've seen over the last few weeks, this is a team that doesn't really believe in itself. And I think when they go to do things, when they go to have that conviction from set pieces, from shots, when they're trying to create chances, they don't look like they believe that they're going to do that successfully. And that's where the big problem for me is with Clement, because he's got a style of play that needs conviction, that needs confidence, that needs players with intent and belief that they're going to go and be successful in a high press, in a big challenge, with an attack that comes out from the back where you have to take risks and you have to play around a press. But these players don't look like they're capable of doing that right now. And that's harder to overcome than a lot of things. If it was just the defensive errors, but the players looked like they believed in themselves, they were, capable of turning it around, and they'd shown that they were capable of turning it around, it would be a very different circumstance for me. But where you could go to Clement and you could say, they need to improve the press. They need to improve their marking. They need to stop conceding goals at the back post. They need to improve from crosses and things like this. You could say all of these things, but that's not the problem. I think most coaches would be able to deal with those sorts of problems. They're not able to deal with, or some coaches are able to deal with it, and hopefully Clement is able to deal with it. But I think it takes a lot more effort and different approaches to deal with a lack of confidence that I think is seeping in on not only an individual level with players like Harry Darling, maybe Oscar Schwartau at this point as well, but also on a collective level, because they look like a team lacking conviction. And I think so much of that comes from confidence. So right now I'm kind of left wondering if the only thing that can save Norwich right now is a win. If I know they will be working on the training ground. That's the only thing they can do. That's the only thing in their control, is trying to work on those tactical and technical, we got there in the end, aspects of their game. That's the only thing they can really control. But you feel like they just need a bit of luck. They need something to go for them. And ultimately, this game, you see the difference between the two teams. They probably needed 5 pieces of luck to be able to win this one. But on Tuesday at home against Oxford, who have also been struggling, who had the lead against Middlesbrough but were pegged back today and will be disappointed by that. A first home game under the new head coach in front of your own fans. I think that's a real opportunity for Norwich to kick on. And although I'm sure there isn't much room for positivity right now, that might be the hope that Clement takes, because I do believe that the key to them now is just winning by hook or by crook. And we can say that. It's very easy to say that. It does feel like Norwich probably need a little bit of luck right now. But they didn't get much luck tonight. They didn't show much in terms of performance, and they probably didn't earn their own luck either. A lot of poor goals conceded, a lot of poor performances out there. Only 1 or 2 very minor positives. And I think it spelled out as much as anything, the scale of the job that Clement has. I don't think it's purely on the head coach to sort all of these problems. I think they have a squad that's going to struggle to get themselves out of this. Clement has a huge job on his hands. I think it's massive for Norwich City, for this football club in the long term, as well as the mid-term and the short term, that Clement is able to turn that around going forward. So, I'm interested to see how he deals with that. I'm now going to head back into the press room and away from St Andrews after what's felt like quite a long day, I'm sure, from a Norwich City perspective. My sympathy is with the travelling fans, and hopefully you're well on your way on safe journeys back home now. Of course, the place to go for more Norwich City coverage and hopefully a little bit more positivity in future with some better results is pinkham.com/subscribe if you haven't already. Thank you for joining me for my verdict. Your main man Connor will be back for Oxford, but I'm obviously filling in today. So hopefully I did a decent job. As I said, thanks for joining me. Pinkham.com/subscribe, the place to go. See you later.